Uh, what are you doing?
Shh, I'm trying to sneak around them.
Uh, you're alone in your office, dude.
But it's fun, though.
So, are we recording the podcast today, or...?
Oh, okay, fine. It's time to sneak through corridors and wear well-made disguises, folks, as we talk all things stealth. Welcome to Music Arcade. Hello, everyone. I'm Galen, the SoundGuy Firestone.
I'm Ranakel.
And I'm Eddie, and my other ride is a cardboard box.
Funny enough, we managed to skip Metal Gear on this one, and I'm still not sure how he pulled that one off.
And you were the one telling me that Metal Gear was a prime example of how stealth games have good music.
Yeah, and that's why I deliberately avoided it. I was already taking Hitman.
Yeah, and I deliberately avoided Hitman because that's your stuff. But then I was like... I mean, with the selection we landed on, honestly, we can prove stealth games have good music without even needing Metal Gear.
Oh, for sure. And not even stealth games, but even just stealth segments in games.
Exactly. In other words, it is a music selection to surpass Metal Gear.
Okay, well, wow, that actually ties in really well. Good job.
Thank you.
That one caught me off guard. I didn't see that one coming at all.
That got me off guard. That's why I had to say it.
Cheers.
It's one thing I learned playing fighting games. The best mind games are the ones you aren't even aware of yourself.
I gotta remember that one, if only I was smart enough to.
You can predict yourself.
Alright, well, we've set our premise, I think, as well as we're going to set it, so we may as well dive right into a beat-em-up?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's not exactly always the sneakiest game, is it?
No, and I kind of need to apologize, because I know we said that we were going to avoid using Yakuza music for Music Arcade for the foreseeable future due to our ongoing Year of the Dragon challenge. But this was a case in which I felt that it was actually, vital and necessary to do so, and I will explain why. The Yakuza games are beat-em-ups. Every single solution is solved with some measure of punch. Every single one.
Except Like a Dragon, which is a JRPG.
Right.
In which every single solution is solved by punching.
Right. So here we have the spin-off Judgment. And Judgment stars a guy by the name of Takayuki Yagami. And Yagami is not a punch guy. I mean, he is. He can absolutely fight. But he is by far and away the weakest protagonist. He's not a battle-hardened Yakuza or a loan shark. He's a lawyer-turned-PI. So he's got to get smart. He's got to get tactical. He's got to do things like wear disguises and plant bugs, and very often sneak and follow behind people. And the theme for doing that is a really cool song, actually.
It is a very cool song, and as the one that orders the tracks, it's no secret why I put it in first. First, to put you on blast for using a Yakuza game track right on the first occasion where we shouldn't. But more importantly, because honestly, that's just some very good sneaky sound.
It is. And it's so off the norm for this franchise. It really kind of took it to a different place. And this isn't the only mechanic like this. I explained a couple of the other ones.
Yeah, honestly, I think the song, it's not just good as a stealthy song, it's also good as a stealthy cop song.
It is.
Specifically. Because I instantly get the vibes of a noir cop just trailing their target.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much music to tail someone to.
It is. And I really have to give it to the composers on this one, because, again, this is something that, to the best of my knowledge, Yakuza has kind of never done. This is just not a franchise that does this.
Well, except that sneaking music I mentioned from Like a Dragon.
Yes. But even then,
But even that has a battle music variation where all things break down.
Right. So, I would also like to point out that Like a Dragon was actually after this game, like, chronologically.
Yes.
So, but yeah, I found myself, like, the moment this was said, I'm like, this is such a departure from this franchise, and I know we weren't going to do this, but sometimes you gotta know when to break the rules. And I have to shout this song out for doing something...
Like on the very first instance.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know.
I'm not actually mad, I just find it very funny.
The timing was great, but, like, I wouldn't have done this if it wasn't specifically Stealth. Like, there were 2 songs I knew I had to use, and both of them made my list. And this was one of them, and for good reason. It's like, oh, here comes the developers doing something the franchise has never done before, and doing it so well and so competently that it really stands out in my mind, and this song being one of the few songs in Yakuza history that stayed in my head without having to listen to a YouTube video.
That's generally a good sign.
That is generally a good sign.
And it's just a great example for what's to come, because as far as the choices of instruments go, it's all there. The piano is all tension, maybe even more so than the violin that does its job as well. And the plucked bass just adds that feeling of that noir detective stuff. The slow methodical pace,
Yeah.
Just works.
If there's one thing I learned over listening to this playlist, it is that Stealth has a specific sound scheme that every one of these songs, except one, kind of uses.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting, I guess sort of an obvious discovery, but it's cool to see it codified like that.
Yeah, like sometimes we do our research and we reach completely surprising conclusions. And sometimes we do our research and, oh yeah, that thing I was feeling is actually correct.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just discover the thing that pretty much every composer already knows.
Whoa, I guess wheels are round.
Sometimes it's good to be reminded of that.
Indeed.
So let's go ahead and move on from this. Next up, Eddie, I believe this one is your responsibility.
Yes, it is. From Dishonored. Blooded Suspense.
Well,
It
name
is
tracks.
suspenseful.
It is.
Yes, it's something I really enjoy from the Dishonored soundtrack in general is the way it uses the violins. Kind of cements the idea that this is a fantastical world, very separate from ours, and this track is no different.
For this one, I would even say that it has kind of a haunted texture, like they play it so high, it almost sounds like a bandsaw.
Oh yeah, it really does have a very very haunting quality to it. A few tracks in the game do that, but this in particular I think is one of the top 2. I would say the most haunting one is sort of sing-alongy take on the Drunken Sailor shanty. That one was fairly haunting due to the vocals.
Right.
But that one aside, this one is pretty out there as well.
Now, I noticed something compositionally with this song that really kind of threw me off, is that there's actually, like, 2 different key signatures going on here that interact with each other in a very, like, intentionally dissonant way. Like, it doesn't feel, like, amateurish or a mistake. It just feels like a conscious
Keeps you on
decision.
your toes.
Yeah. It's a conscious decision to compose in a very kind of awkward way and make something out of it that I thought was very intriguing about this song.
I remember hearing from a podcast host that once said that sometimes you just have to know when to break the rules.
Fair. Well, this is definitely one of those times. Like, nothing I'm saying is, like, a complaint. It does work.
Absolutely.
It's on the soundscapey
think,
side. Not gonna lie. This one is a little hard to find a melody for.
For sure. In fact, I was really challenging myself with trying to come up with a pick from Dishonored that wasn't just Drunken Whaler. But this one is, I think, a good representation of stealth, especially in Dishonored in the Arcane Studios style.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm very glad that we have a track like that that's very soundscapey, because I feel that it's an important part of the genre.
It is.
Yeah, I think a big thing about stealth, I think, not every game is like this. Some just, you have all the info you need visually, but often the sound is very important because you need to hear a guard coming in your way, or something like that. So it's very common for the music to be more soundscapey than actual song-like, for the lack of a better term.
Yeah, like one of the points of stealth is to not make a ruckus. And now I'm curious about what would a sneaky metal song would sound like.
Okay.
Probably doom metal.
Okay. You know, I was planning on saving this to the end, but since you bring it up, here we go.
Oh boy.
What have you... Okay. So I'm going to
What
read...
have I done?
What have you done? I'm going to read a line from the Discord. Today, in music, I could have technically justified if I chose violence for the theme. And you left that with no explanation. And I refuse. I refuse to let that just sit there. I was literally planning on this joke for the end, but we're doing it now since you brought it up. Rana may not have chosen violence, but I am. What the hell is an 80s hair metal song doing in this anywhere near this playlist, even if it technically isn't part of it?
Okay, that's because Alpha Protocol is a very sneaky game, and this just happens to be the theme for one of the boss fights, in which you do have to occasionally re-establish stealth to prevent the coked up maniac in front of you from charging at you with a knife.
The hell?
That actually sounds awesome.
Yeah, Alpha Protocol is great.
So now I'm choosing violence again because you really should have actually picked this one. I would have loved to have this conversation without me having to challenge you for it.
Fair, but I feel like for all the fun it is and for all I could have with the excuses, like, actually it's a very nice way to show that instead of silence you can also establish stealth by being part of something that's very loud. I wanted to talk about other things more and felt like that was just me being cute.
On the one hand, I totally agree, and you do have some great picks on here. On the other hand, you know, this does present a very intriguing counterpoint, and, blending into crowds and being part of something loud does actually come up in a lot of these games at times, and I think that may not be talked about enough. Social stuff, as well as...
I feel like that's mainly an important part of Hitman.
It is, and we will definitely be talking about that later, you know, as we foreshadowed a few times. Okay, well, for those of you wondering what song I'm talking about, it's Turn Up the Radio by Autograph, a very kitschy, dated, inoffensive hair metal track. It just threw me off a lot that this was anywhere near our playlist, and I'm just like, there's a joke here. It turns out it wasn't a joke, it was something I'm actually now very glad I called out, because I'm glad to have learned this story about how this boss fight works, because I think that's actually very fascinating and a very intriguing use of stealth.
Adding that to the playlist then.
I was gonna make a joke that the words dated and hair metal are synonyms, but the struts do exist, so, you know, you get a pass.
I mean, I would make an argument that the darkness made the genre not go away, and they were, what, early mid-2000s?
They're still going.
They are still
got
going,
back,
but their big hit was like...
they're
early
honestly better
mid-2000s.
now.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it. I haven't really listened to their work too much, but yeah, they sound like they were a lot of fun. I know they did a tour with Lady Gaga a few years ago, which is a better fit than you'd think.
It's some cool party music.
It is. Also, she's a total metalhead, which is so weird, but good for her. Anyway, we are way off the line now. Okay, anyways, now let's talk about an actual stealth song, except not really, except yes, except no, except yes, that you did pick, Rana, so Deus Ex.
Deus Ex Human Revolution, to be more precise. I went with the theme for the restricted part of the police station, in which you sneak in. I feel like a lot of it is bad because I assume most tracks would be more in the either modern day or ancient era sneaky times, and I wanted something more futuristic because I feel like that's an important aspect. And as far as futuristic soundtracks go, Deus Ex works very well. It's pretty iconic, and this one, while obviously more subdued than some of the more recognizable themes, I feel does a very effective job at representing that idea of sneaking into a place and kind of having to subsume yourself in the atmosphere of the place, mainly represented by the police radio chatter that feels threatening, and the fact that it comes from different directions instead of being a constant, kind of encouraging you to keep looking around and chasing after shadows.
Now,
honestly, you talk about ancient stealth or something, but this has some elements of that, like historical, let's say, because I remember there were some talks around the time of the game's release that they deliberately made it a sort of futuristic Victorian thing.
I think the theme was more of a future renaissance.
Yeah, future renaissance, yes, that's right. I remember even the visuals have some of that, because Adam Jensen's coat has some flower patterns on the shoulders, which are very Renaissance-esque. And this song has what I can only describe as ambient Arabian chanting or something, which works for the track, but it is very much a soundtrack that is futuristic but brings historical elements into it.
I don't know, it always felt more like you are in the unadorned back elements of a utilitarian place to me. Precisely a removal of that Renaissance aspect. But maybe I didn't pay enough attention to a part that made you think about those Arabian chanting.
It's mostly this, specifically the voice that is in there, interspersed with the actual police radio chatter. There's this feminine haunting voice, which is something that honestly Deus Ex Human Revolution used a lot in its soundtrack. But it, to me, kind of brings to mind sort of Arabian music, let's say. Again, that's for the lack of a better term. I don't know the proper genre name.
So I'm going to be honest, I did listen through this a few times, and I don't get Arabian off of this at all, so I'm not sure what you're... Not really sure what the...
Like, the thing I can see that adds a bit of exotic flavor is that sometimes, as part of the subdued instrumentation, I can hear, like, in the video, in the playlist at 134, there's some didgeridoo, but that's more to add a bit of a sneaky, spooky atmosphere.
Yeah. Like, didgeridoo does have that like atmospheric vibe to it as an instrument when used like that.
Yeah, it's because it sounds very hollow.
It honestly didn't even track to me as a didgeridoo on a first listen. It's mixed into the general soundscape of that. particular section of the track.
Oh yeah, it blends in. Stealth.
Hey. Yeah, it's not that just to clarify, it's not that I hear this song and I see the song as being for an Arabic place. It's just I kind of get some Arabian inspiration for the vocals specifically.
Yeah, no, that's fair if that's what you get.
Yeah, but the environment that I envision is definitely 100% exactly what it is in the game.
Yeah, which is generally a good sign.
Oh yeah.
Then let's move on to some JRPG.
Yeah, this one actually has a melody.
That it does.
I don't think any of our songs prior to this have a main melody line.
Yeah, because that's honestly a pretty stealth music thing to do. Again,
It
the
is.
absence of music that keeps your other senses more heightened.
That said, you know, I've made my preference for music I can whistle pretty clear.
Same.
And this is a game that doesn't get talked about enough. Trails in the Sky second chapter. Well, I've talked about it briefly on this show before, but Falcom did a really, really great job with these two soundtracks. One day I gotta get over to Cold Steel. Apparently I own the first 3 Cold Steel games, and I didn't know that until I was looking through my library the other day. I don't know when that happened.
Humble bundles will do that to you.
Right? And we have ourselves, a very, you know, it starts off the same kind of way. It's got that, like, bass guitar. It's got the xylophone, which is incredibly common in stealth, music. But unlike usual, this one actually, like, really kind of pushes the melody, because he was still playing an RPG, and while sneaking is definitely part of this segment, and the song is literally called Infiltration, you still got to enjoy the dungeon you're in. And if that's one thing that the Trails in the Sky duology, technically a trilogy, but the third chapter's kind of a side story. It feels more. I mean, it plays that out, right? Like, it plays like an RPG.
Yes.
And it's got that strong melody line that Falcom is actually really good at.
Yeah, listening to it, it's definitely more of a light-hearted action
Yeah.
while you're sneaking around.
Yes.
It
You're
is
not dreading for your life, you just don't want to get caught.
Yeah, it's an oddly bright song for stealthing around.
It's honestly
Yeah,
an
but-
honestly bright game, and I kind of,
Exactly.
which is funny because the main character's name is Estelle Bright. And, And she's kind of got that, you know, characterization about her where...
Plucky, happy-go-lucky,
Yes.
let's go and get things done attitude, yeah.
She does, but in a far more realistic environment than a lot of the circumstances would imply. So she does go through some stuff, and
Oh, yeah, she does.
her character development is actually quite strong. You say that like you played it. Did you play second
I
chapter?
played it.
You did play second
Not
chapter.
the second chapter, but the first, yeah.
Ah, got it. So yeah, the music as a whole kind of plays that out. And I think this Infiltration is kind of both the best of that and almost kind of the worst, because this is the one case where I kind of think you would not want that, but it still plays, it still works.
Yeah.
So
It has a part within the broader soundtrack of the game.
yeah.
And overall, on its own, it sells more on the feeling of sneaking around than the action of sneaking around, or the tension of it.
Right.
And as a
Although
result, it's real jazzy.
it is
It
real
does-
jazzy.
Yeah, it does bring something I almost brought up with the Judgment track, which is that jazz is surprisingly huge in Japan. Like,
Yeah.
in the Tokyo Olympics, there's a reason they had a jazz pianist. I believe her name is Hiromi. they had her perform, because jazz is huge in Japan. And this song very much feels to me like it's sort of a bridge between straight up jazz and city pop. And city pop is a Japanese genre as well. And it's very bright, like most city pop tends to be. But also very cool, very. It's bright in sort of a collected way, let's say. It's not hair metal bright, where it's over the top.
Yeah, no, it's bright like a neon light, if you will.
One thing I like about this song, it's got a lead. It's got a lead line in the melody with xylophone, and then it transitions into a, really kind of bad horn sample. I think that's supposed to be a sax. It's just a really bad one. It sounds like a bad trumpet.
I think if we're thinking of the same sound, I believe that's pretty common in city pop, which might be why it drew to me those comparisons.
I mean, that's fair. I just I don't like this horn sample. I don't. The thing is, Falcom Sound Team JDK actually released like a remix album of the entire soundtrack that kind of made everything worse. I don't think there's any song on here that actually gets improved by these remixes. So, which is a really weird way to do things. Yeah, I don't know. This one was introduced to me by an old friend who I haven't spoke to in a very long time, this franchise, and I only recently got to it. I mean, I say recently, I got to it like 7-8 years ago. Whenever the, I guess when Trails in the Sky second chapter came out is when I played it. But the soundtrack has been a pretty common occurrence on my playlist, and there's good reason for that, and I'm glad to be able to show some of it off. On the other hand, we could also talk about one of the biggest JRPG soundtracks of all time. I think this one was yours, Rana.
That it was. That would be the track of the Viper Manor from none other than Chrono Cross.
Yep.
And that was the first track that... Well, that was the second track that came to mind, and the first wasn't from a stealth game at all. So it was from a puzzle game, because that also has that kind of need to be aware of your surrounding, but there are two different genres.
Mm-hmm.
But this one was actually about sneaking at night in a manor, the Viper Manor, in fact.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, this is very much your sort of Yasunori Mitsuda kind of standard issue. Like, this definitely sounds like his work. It's a follow-up to a similar song in Chrono Trigger. Same kind of instrumentation as the last one, believe it or not. Got the xylophone, the bass, the plucked strings, some synth pads.
Yeah,
one thing I noticed...
I kind of dragged them together, same game genre and similar points.
One thing I did notice... Sorry, go
on. I feel like what really this track emphasizes very well is the sharp, distinct note that kind of helps you focus and encourage you to pay attention to your surroundings. And then there's the mounting melody, the do-do-do-do-do-do, that rises up and then comes down, that really feels like you are hiding in a bush while there's a patrol that's coming closer by and then moving away, really driving that feeling of tension and release.
And then one thing I did notice from the mixing of this song that I thought was really cool, and it doesn't actually mean anything, but I only heard this for the first time when I listened to it in my headphones, because it's actually a very subtle effect. But at the very beginning, when you have the double xylophones, they're actually hard panned. So one left, one right, one left, and right. when the song is blended, it isn't as obvious. But when listening in headphones, it actually creates a that fear is kind of everywhere kind of effect.
Yeah, like you're looking left, you're looking right, you're checking your corners.
I hadn't noticed that. I had to just go back and check that a little bit right now, and you're right. I love those effects when composers use that.
That was a really cool mixing effect that I think really enhances the song, and it's very subtle, but it's done very well.
And honestly, the fact that it's so subtle that it manages to kind of sneak by is first very meta, and just a nice way to have a very fitting effect that doesn't need to be ham-fisted, because you're Yasunori Mitsuda, and you know your stuff.
Yeah. We talked about him at length, especially in the Kid Icarus episode not too long ago. And, he runs a very tight ship, and even, almost quasi-throwaway songs, the soundtrack is stacked as Chrono Crosses, like this one. And it's obviously not a throwaway, but even that has just some incredible details in it that, this isn't one of the most memorable songs on the soundtrack, but it is exceedingly competent. Especially for an old PS1 game where this sort of thing was kind of just not done.
Part of why, when we decided on the theme, I was like, okay, let's broaden the spectrum a bit, and not just talk about stealth games, but also stealth sectionist games, was because I very much had this track in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is a discrete song, but it's also one that stays in your head.
Yeah.
And stayed in mine, in any case.
That's entirely fair. I was the one to suggest the theme of stealth, and there's...
I think you were right to bring this one to the forefront here, because, again, when I think of the soundtrack, this is not the song that comes to mind, but I'm glad to take a fresh listen to it, especially given the circumstances.
Yeah. And that soundtrack is more than amazing beach themes and disappointing main battle theme.
It really is more than that. I used to be able to play the dragons themes, not like the ones toward the end, but like the kind of the soft ballad. I used to be able to play that on piano once upon a time.
Ooh, neat.
That was decades ago.
Eddie, quick, Mark of the Ninja! Boom, stick down ya!
So, Mark of the Ninja. It's kind of an underappreciated game, I'd say. And the soundtrack, most of it's just ambient stuff. I tried to bring an actual track from a stealth section from it, but there weren't really anything of note. But there was one song of note in that game, which is the theme for the final level, which is actually more of an epilogue than anything, titled Mark and Blade, which was composed by a group called Yamantaka / Sonictitan. They are not the composers of the main game, they just did this song. And it fits the very ethereal vibes of the level. I don't remember the exact details of why everything is so ethereal in that level in particular, but it's basically where you choose your ending.
Yeah, but even without knowing the levels, I mean the battles alone make it feel less like an assassination and more like an exorcism.
Honestly, it can be either, depending on which ending you choose.
Yeah.
Because this is a game with two endings, and you pretty much choose the ending on this level. And if I recall correctly, one of them has you assassinate a guy, and the other has you kill yourself. So.
Okay, so what is the game I was thinking of? There's a lot of ninja stealth games out there in the world.
Yes, and in fact, in my pre-selection, I had a game by the same company and a ninja game. And then I saw this track and I was, oh, like, that's my 2 last cuts.
There you go. This one's got, like, some really great stuff going on with it. I love the use of percussion here. I love the build-up. There's a guitar and vocal lead that really works. It's just a really neat song.
And it's kind of out of character for the group that wrote this, because I checked out a couple other songs from them, and they aren't noise music, but they are very much in that industrial subculture. It is not noise, but it is noisy, let's say. And this song is...
Are they a Japanese group? Okay.
The group is actually from Canada, though I think they have a lot of Asian members, or at least descendants of actual Asians.
Interesting.
They call themselves a collective, not a band, so there might be a lot of people in this.
Oh, I guess they really are into Indus.
Anyway, continue.
Yeah, moving along. So, even the group themselves, they describe themselves as being a thunderous rock band, and you don't see that thunderous side on this song in particular, I'd say. There is a level, I suppose, of like thunder-like sounds with the drumming, but it's not loud here. As opposed to the other stuff.
But at the same time, compared to the other tracks we've listened to, it definitely feels more climactic, at least.
Yes.
Like before it was the real sneaky part, it's like during you springing up from your hiding place to do the deed.
You're actually just walking in the level proper, but that's a good analogy. It is definitely the climax of the story for your character, because at this point I think you've been betrayed by pretty much every single other character in the game, so it is your moment of vengeance at the end.
So on the subject of, other parts of stealth, you're done with the sneaking, you're done with the, jumping out from the bushes and stabbing, intentionally or not. You assassinated your target, and now you are triumphantly heading towards the exit. When this topic came up in our pre-production discussions, this was the first song that came to mind, because I'm me, and of course it is.
Yeah, I mean, there was kind of an untold understanding that when we decided the theme, okay, I'm not touching Assassin's Creed because that's for Edie, and I'm not touching Hitman because that's for Galen.
Mm-hmm.
You know us too well.
I mean, it's pretty obvious. This isn't anything I've hidden. The soon-to-be renamed Hitman World of Assassination, which started in Hitman 2016 and encompassed Hitman 2 and 3, and now it's just going to be one game under that title, is one of my favorite games of all time. Like, just straight up. That's on my top 10 list somewhere. Which, for a modern game, is actually kind of incredible, because I very often have, like, nostalgia goggles on when it comes to older stuff I played when I was younger. But, this game really kind of earns it, and one of the stages, the last regular pre-DLC stage to the Hitman 2 portion, was Isle of Sgàil. And it was this incredibly vibey zone, very dark and gothic, but also mixed with modern futurism. Everyone's out there wearing masks, and I remember one person says that one of the musicians probably thinks they're in a place with a lot more nudity, an obvious reference to Eyes Wide Shut, which definitely is at least a visual inspiration for Isle of Sgàil. And this whole thing is cool. And when you are done with the assassination, you do something that you don't do on any other stage. You can choose to kidnap somebody and escape with them. If you don't, this kidnapping happens entirely off screen, so the ending doesn't change. But if you do choose to grab this guy and go, the additions to the Mission Accomplished music, which has been around since Hitman 2016, really kind of shine. Because not only are you, leaving the mission with the sheer amount of just this incredible remix of a theme, but you have that added tension of now you're trying to sneak out of here with a hostage who could blow your cover at any time if he's so inclined.
And he's probably very inclined to do so, in fact.
Actually, he's not, but for a whole lot of reasons that would actually, be a spoiler to say. He's actually cooperative throughout, unless you do something stupid like shoot a civilian.
Alright. Which is interesting because the vibe I got from this film, and maybe that's more because of the general themes used for the Mission Accomplished themes, is a sort of grim resolution of really getting in the mindset of a 47 type of character that does, quote-unquote, what has to be done.
Yeah. In fact, in the entire franchise of World of Assassination, this is the first time where he's really making a decision for himself entirely. And is essentially kidnapping the big bad of World of Assassination. So, yeah, this is actually... This is also, level design-wise, the first time the story actually plays into the level design instead of the other way around. So it really, comes together very well. And we get to see this other side of 47, one who's uniquely self-determined. And we don't see that one again till late into the Hitman 3 segment.
It's cool that they really mix things up and make it more than just a loosely interconnected set of sandboxes, even though that's the main driving force.
That is the main driving force. And, I'm 100% there with you on this one. There's a reason I call Isle of Sgàil my favorite stage of the franchise. I guess in the game now is an accurate statement, or at least it will be from recording about 9 days from now. And honestly, this song is part of that. Because it takes the Mission Accomplished theme and really just builds on it. It's got, the heavy chorus going on there. It's got, these big string bombardments. And yet it still doesn't feel so big as to be, It doesn't feel so big as to be, an action sequence. It's still very much a you don't want to get caught vibe.
It's a slow walk, not a rush.
Exactly. And I think
something I find interesting is that I think Galen pretty much has only played the World of Assassination trilogy. I've been a Hitman player since the actual Hitman 2 game, way back when Hitman 2 Silent Assassin, which was when they actually started getting properly into making the franchise a stealth franchise. And there has always been this sense of monumentality to the soundtrack, even back in the Jesper Kyd days, when he was the composer for the franchise.
Jesper Kyd was very good at that.
Oh yeah, every title theme from his era of the franchise was monumentality at its best, let's say. And I find it interesting that this song in particular, not only does it continue that trend, that trait of the franchise, let's call it, but it actually uses it in a way that, to me, is one of the rare cases where it's actually 100% warranted, because there were some times where the scale of the thing was kind of, this seems a bit too personal to be that big.
Yeah,
This situation, knowing the plot and having played this game, this is a case where not only is it a good track, and not only does it fit the franchise's theme on ongoing themes, but it fits the plot to a T, I would say.
Yeah, like the thing that comes to mind is that level that's more in an American suburb. For this one, you don't really want to hear the and going on and all that grandiose air because of how homely the place of infiltration is, regardless of what's actually happening and who you're actually there for.
Yeah, this would be totally out of place in Whittleton Creek. 100% agreed there.
Exactly. But in a place like that, it's right at home.
Yeah, for the unfamiliar, it's literally a single island with a huge castle in it, and you're infiltrating a secret society meeting.
And in this case, the exfiltration is by far and away one of the more interesting things. Again, in part because of the song, but also because of the context. You want to kidnap the Constant? You gotta now. I know this was a design element they did in Hitman 3, which is the first time you do a stage, you have to do like the required exit, but then after that, you can't. I know that in this stage in Hitman 2, you don't have to do anything involving the Constant when it comes to exiting the stage if you don't want to. I don't remember if you actually need to kidnap him the first time yourself. I don't actually remember that. I know I did, but I know in Hitman 3 they do like require that. In Chongqing and Mendoza especially, there's exit paths and objectives you have to take, but then after you do that once, they're now optional.
Yeah, I don't think it was required. I think it was counted like a bonus challenge or something.
Yeah.
Which is a bit of a shame for the monumentality of the song, but it still works with the scenery at least.
It still works with the scenery, and, spoiler, as I said, you're kidnapping the Constant either way, whether you, the player, do it, or whether it happens off screen. I still feel like it's warranted, though you do miss out on quite a bit of interesting dialogue.
Might as well earn it.
May as well. Also, the exits in that stage are kind of epic in and of themselves. Like, stealing a flare and going to a secret, heavily guarded helipad to get out that way, or diving off a rocky cliff into a stormy sea. Like, they're a little more hardcore than the other stages, so I think the music is warranted even if you don't do the kidnapping subquest. Subquest? Sub-objective? I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's just, it loses a little bit of the impact, is what I'd say, but it doesn't mean it's any less fitting.
Yeah, I would agree there. I mean, they knew what they were writing for, but they still made it at least remotely appropriate for everything else.
Yeah.
Unless there's a secret exit.
Without the context, it's still a very 47 song.
It is a very 47 song.
It is aggressively a 47 song.
Then how about we move to something that's aggressively Victorian no. Unity is the one in revolutionary France.
I find it ironic that the French guy forgot that this was France. But
there's 84 gajillion Assassin's Creed games.
Sometimes the thing the closest to you are the one you notice the last.
You guys did notice that the Notre Dame Cathedral is on the actual album cover, right?
The what?
I did not notice this.
Oh boy.
I saw the people.
Well, anyway, as for the music, I'll start with a little bit of a story. Some of you who are longtime listeners or who know me personally might remember that a while back I talked about Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which as of this recording is the most recent game in the franchise.
Right.
And I noted how the game had the two most fan-favorite composers in it, Jesper Kudd and Sarah Schachner. I don't know how to pronounce how she pronounces her surname. And yet that soundtrack was very meh. This game is probably what made her a fan favorite among the franchise fans. Assassin's Creed Unity had a two CD album for its soundtrack, 2-volume album, and pretty much everyone I've talked to or saw speaking about it online has said that the first volume is only good for the title tracks, which are all puns. The real meat of the soundtrack is on volume 2, and volume 2 is the one that's composed by Sarah Schachner. And this is more of a... This track I brought along here is more of a combat song, so it fits those moments in stealth games where you screwed up and now you're gonna have to deal with it. But I love how she basically turned off waltz into a fighting theme, a combat theme.
She did. I do have some comments about this one, but I'll let you guys discuss a little bit first.
Alright, then I'll mention my impression because it does not feel stealthy at all, except I've noted the drums that feel intention kind of underneath the melody. And that dynamic of something very, not busy, but very alive on the forefront with an undercurrent. The mental image I had in mind was kind of that public space shootout scene in John Wick, where there's an appearance of normal daily activities, and secretly there's two guys that are shooting at each other with movie silence guns.
Oh, I remember that scene.
And so I feel like this could have kind of that similar effect, except instead of silence guns, because those at the times were very loaded. It's kind of like looking like you're dancing, but you're also actually stabbing someone. That's the feel I'm getting.
I think that's very fair, because honestly, now that you mention it, the first image that comes to my mind is this playing while I and NPCs are having a shootout inside a house, while all the NPCs outside the house are just moving right along with their day.
You know what?
Yeah.
At least the opening 2 bars, the image I get is whips and vampires. This opening is like almost note for note right off of Castlevania. I can't be the only one who noticed that, right?
I can see that. It's not my first impression, but I can see where you're coming from.
Well, I mean, literally, it's note for note. The first two bars are Bloody Tears. Not Bloody Tears, other one, Vampire Killer. Like, it just goes into the waltz instead of da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Like, it doesn't go there.
I suppose I didn't really hone in on that because I was thinking more of the kind of tracks that inspired Bloody Tears in the first place and made the parallel there by cutting the middleman.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear that, but I can't hear that specific 6/8 time chord scale progression without going into that song. Like the second I hear that opening.
Honestly, fair.
That's fair. That song's iconic for a reason.
Yeah, it is. And I can hear the guitars, and I can hear the strings, and my brain is going into that song. I have to actively think about this song as its own without immediately thinking of Castlevania. But even after that, the song is all over the place. And here is my comment. Did the composer take meth? I can only describe this as tweaker classical. It, changes songs every 4 bars. I have so much trouble following it.
Yeah, like I said, it keeps very much in movement, and that picture that dancing with some selfie stabbing. You're changing dance partner every 4 steps too.
You really
Clearly.
are. I don't know. I maybe I'm missing some vital context on this one, but this song like drives me up a wall.
No, but like, I feel that fits the fighting style of Assassin's Creed, which very much encouraging you to go from one enemy to the next and back, depending on who's approaching you.
This pretty much was from the era of the franchise where combat was just you were jumping from one enemy to the next real quick, as opposed to the more recent games, which are sort of Dark Souls inspired in their combat. So that tracks as well. This really was how you fought.
The scourge of the Souls like infects even stealth games now. Grumble.
Yeah, there's a reason Valhalla is exactly my favorite game in the franchise, mostly because it almost has no stealth. But then in Unity, it was pretty common, at least for me, to just like jump into a window, stabbing someone on my way down, and then take my sword out and fight 3 other guys in the same room, just jumping from one to the next, like Rana just described.
I thought for a little while there the combat would have taken more of a cue from the Arkham games. But that did not end up coming to pass, unfortunately.
I'd say it's kinda similar, but you don't knock enemies down so fast that you're jumping around like Batman does in those games. It's not that frenetic, but
No.
it is similar-ish.
This particular song is that frenetic. I'm just so thrown off by it. You know what song it actually reminds me of in the worst possible way?
Oh god.
That Jay-Z and Justin Timberlake song that just goes all over the place and then briefly goes into Nirvana for no reason. Am I the only one who remembers that song? This was like 10 years ago.
I'm glad I don't.
I'm neutral on the fact that I don't.
All right. It's just a very weird song. It's very similar to this one in that it's like several disparate movements just duct taped together without much cohesion. At least the way I listen to it.
I can't believe it. I leave you the Assassin's Creed track, and you thank me by stealing my shtick of having completely disconnected music.
Oh boy.
Anyway, let's move on
Yeah.
to the 5 Flow Goodbye.
This song is awesome.
Yeah, it is. So, first things first, let's address the elephant in the room. We're talking about cover art. This one literally has the character's shadow leaning against the side of the cover art, playing the sax, while there is a neon sign with jazz written on it in the middle of it.
I wonder what
there's-
genre this song is gonna be. Is it new metal?
Yes, clearly.
Good try, but it's more jazz-ish. It's jazz.
It's jazz. It's just totally jazz.
Yes.
Straight up jazz.
It's not actually just jazz, but it's definitely jazz for the first half.
Yeah.
In a way, it's a bit in line with the Trellis in the Sky track. Not just because it's kind of jazzy, but more because it's less about the action of sneaking and more about the sneakster's experience, if you will. The idea of being a smooth operator, moving like a shadow through the city at night, and boy, you're so cool and you're just the best at it until things go wrong and you reset the level.
Yes.
Which happens very fast.
It happens a lot in this game. This one I've actually played. This was on my pick a game list, and I really enjoyed it. But yes,
Oh, yeah,
it
it's
is
great.
very easy to go wrong.
Yeah, you wouldn't think a game about a guy purchasing online a pair of pants would get to be so atmospheric, but here we go. And so, yeah, so you are operating in 2D environment, basically completing for petty little cash at first, at least, a variety of objectives by having kind of a full overview of the operation, which makes you plan your objective for 90% of the level and then do them for the last 10%. It is very satisfying when you just go in, do the things you must do, go out.
I know I try not to talk about gameplay, but I played this one after I got into Hitman, and there was one situation in this game that really kind of threw me off, and that is the AI has absolutely no, like, safe zone or not safe zone for your character. So there was one case where I'm standing at the bus stop where you think civilians would be, and a sniper's like, I don't like the look of that guy. Bang, I'm dead. I'm like...
No,
I'm not exactly trespassing. I'm waiting for the bus. What are you doing?
Maybe you are waiting for the bus too suspiciously.
Apparently.
But, like, it's a game that understands fundamentally and on a design level how fun stealth games are. It's not just about the tension and the fear of not getting caught. It's about doing things and being that mastermind things and occasionally jumping on somebody and punching them in the face 25 times in a row to get an achievement.
I'd say this game understands stealth in the same way that the more recent Hitman games, the current trilogy, does, which is the understanding that the cool part of stealth is how you come off as the cool guy. Because in combat, you can be messy as hell in combat, no matter what game it is. But in stealth, pretty much every stealth game, if you do it right, you just like, you're James Bond, man. It could be a medieval era stealth game. You still feel like James Bond.
I mean, Thief the Dark Project is right there. And as far as doing things and going just as planned, that's the feeling you get. And that's the feeling that music illustrates. And then halfway through, it shifts instrumentation because there's also a hacking part that isn't a hacking minigame, but a whole part of the gameplay where you have to use a crosswire system to link different triggers to different kind of mechanics, which is very creative and fun and adds really a puzzle game aspect to it. Like, a lot of the stealth games we've covered, it's basically you stealth until you action. This one is you puzzle until you stealth. And all through that, I mean, it's interesting also that it keeps the hacky part in mind and the puzzle game in mind because each of the level themes has specifically a variation for when you are viewing through the crosswire view. But even outside of that, it's a factor.
Sorry, I had another low-flying helicopter flying overhead that was making a lot of random noise in the mic. And I could see my VU meter going, and I'm just like, I can't say squat right now. This is all getting edited out.
I had a couple bikes here, so same deal.
Well, I've said most of my piece, so let loose, friends.
Yeah, no, this one is definitely on point when it comes to the vibe and how it plays compared to other
on
stealth.
point. I get it.
Yeah, gee, thanks. When it comes to the vibe and it comes to how stealth operates in this game, or doesn't, because I have bounced off of things and misplanned a lot in this game, so... Which is part of the puzzle-solving aspect, admittedly.
Yeah, I mean, those pens can get tricky to use.
They can. But,
I think
musically it kind of shows off exactly what we're talking about. It's the same kind of instrumentation, same kind of thing. It is kind of like the ideal form of this sort of stealth concept, this noir jazz stealth concept that we've been talking about more or less all day. And I think the composer did a really good job of that.
Indeed. Composers, I believe.
And just to add to Rana's point, I think the song does... I can't speak for the entire soundtrack. I haven't really played the game. I watched people play it. But for this song at least, it does bring up that element of the hacking thing. And it doesn't feel tacked into the song. It would be way too easy to just throw a surprise sci-fi element into the soundscape, and it would be just weird. But here, it transitions well. And the song as a whole is very smooth.
Yeah, it goes through phases, which is kind of how you do it in games, so good job. And I feel overall that this game's focus on what makes stealth games fun, what makes puzzle games fun as well, is very reflective of the game's creator, Tom Francis, who I'm very looking forward to his future games, which also have a very strong focus on let's take one idea and see where it goes, and in one case, literally run with it, since one of those games involved being a flailing little man going very fast, and the other is a tactical bridge results.
Didn't he also do a game...
Which is sweat, but magic.
Didn't he also do a game like space piracy or something like that?
Oh, yep, he did. Shoot, I don't remember the name, but it kind of has that layer as well of plan your operation first and do it then.
Mm-hmm.
Look forward, then execute. Which I think is really a part of the appeal, makes you feel in control.
I think it's honestly really impressive when a one-man design team can be so versatile. Just going off of the music for a second, it's impressive how this guy does so many different things.
I think the ideal conclusion then would be to quote one Hannibal and say that I love it when a plan comes together.
Nice one.
That's a nice bookend.
Yep. And
I love me some A-Team, what can I say?
I can't blame you one bit. And with that, let's go ahead and talk about what we are playing this week. It's Music Arcade Now Playing. Alright, who's up first this week?
Well, I can be pretty quick about it because I purposefully haven't started a lot, because between Yakuza stuff and I still have to get used to that rhythm, and the fact that there's a whole Fire Emblem game releasing in 2 days, I don't feel like I should start games. So the closest to a new musical experience I've had was a Genshin Impact update that didn't really add a lot of notable music, but was accompanied with the release of a kind of album version of a character trailer themes, and there's a lot of good stuff in there.
Okay.
So Stellar Moments Volume 3, good stuff. Love the Galen's theme, and Goro's theme has this absolutely perfect JRPG normal battle energy that I really like. And then there's FF14 that I am not playing these days, but new patch rolled out and I did look things up, including the new raid, and the 24-man raid musics are very good. I think they set multiple violins on fire to get what they did.
That is very possible. I would not be surprised.
Yeah, that song you shared
These go hard, and I love them.
that song you shared is pretty cool. I wouldn't pick it as a like come up with a boss theme for a raid, but it seems like it would work really well.
Yeah, it's a Harvest Festival music, and it makes the most sense given that you are facing as the first boss of this instance a Harvest Goddess.
That explains it. It does have a very bluegrassy feel, at least to me.
Alright, that's all. I will definitely have more on the next episode, because then I'll talk a lot, I presume, about Fire Emblem. But for now, take it away.
So my list is it's surprisingly long considering I have 2 games as a service in my list, as well as Civilization 6. Because
You're welcome, by the way.
yeah, Rana says he doesn't have time to start new games, and then he gives me Civilization 6. So now I don't have time to start new games either.
Yeah, I feel like he kind of sabotaged you there a little bit.
Yeah, pretty much.
Hey, there's also a new leader pack coming out tomorrow, so I'm pretty screwed on that front too.
Oh lord, and there's the Hitman 3 update, and I've been playing anyway. So one of the games I've been playing has been Hitman 3. I saw the announcement for the World of Assassination update, so I decided let's buy it while it's on sale and before the price hike, because I already own the previous 2 games. So the $70 price tag will be more expensive for me than the current $60. Oh wait, it's discounted, maybe $40 price tag during the Steam winter sale.
Right.
So I've been playing that a little bit, and I'm loving the story and the music right now. It is, as I described to Galen prior to the episode, to the recording, it is Hitman Absolution, but done right, in my opinion. I'm in love with the story. I need to get back to that game. But we've already talked about its music earlier, so the next game is Destiny 2. It's final few weeks of the current expansion, and as a result of the current season as well. And the music for this season, I'm not even sure it has new music for the season. I've talked about how the expansion was sort of a mixed bag with some occasional pleasant surprises, but the current season doesn't really have original music. So in the playlist we have a trailer for the season, and I bring that up because it annoys me that I love the music used in the trailer, where it's very much a cinematic thing to sell you the season.
It's
But
very
I like-
much trailer music.
Yeah, but
Yes, that show sounds like a trailer.
the thing about it is I love how they incorporate the more electronic elements into it, because this is an AI focused season. You are restoring an AI, and it annoys me.
My entire
Go on.
notes for that track was still sure is trailer music. Huh?
Yeah, that's almost word for word mine. Though I
the
do
thing
have a
about it-
comment on it.
Yeah, go on.
So there's a guy who says rebuilding the Warmind is now top priority. That voice sounds so familiar, and I can't place it. Do you have any idea who that is?
I forget the name, but he voices a
Great.
few characters in this game. Brian T. Delaney.
I know that name. I don't know why I know that name. All right, give me a second. Now it's my turn to get the brain word out.
I'm trying to see if I can recognize a game you might have played. Final Fantasy 15 is credited as additional
hated
voices.
that game. Okay, additional voices is not going to help me too much.
Silvio
Justice-
Caruso in Hitman. There you
Oh!
go.
Oh, no wonder he sounded familiar. I've killed him a lot. Why? Okay, that explains that.
Fun fact, that voice in the trailer is him playing another evil scientist.
Apparently that's his typecast?
He actually plays a lot of people in this game, including
I'm
some
sure,
very
yeah.
wholesome characters. But that is him
Wow,
as an evil scientist.
you repeatedly assassinated Wreck-It Ralph.
Poor Ralph.
Oh, apparently he's also a Fortnite gay person.
Well, that one I've never played, so unfortunately that I can't claim any credit for, but apparently I have... Wait, no, I actually want to take credit for repeatedly assassinating, not Wreck-It Ralph, but anything involving Fortnite. That feels good. That feels good in my mind. Oh, Epic, what have you done?
Oh boy. So, going back to the music.
Yep.
The thing that gets me really frustrated with that trailer, even though it is very much trailer music that I probably won't be listening in my free time, is that I enjoy the electronic stingers there representing this AI we're rebuilding in the game, and I feel like that's a missed opportunity to use some element like that in the actual game as well, because that's a cool sound, at least to my ears. It would be really nice to see that in the seasonal activity, to hear that in the seasonal activity. But alas, as far as I can tell, they are just using the same music from the base game, or at least the base expansion for this year, this past year here. So yeah, that's Destiny 2 for now. A game I've played a little bit in the small time I had between Hitman, Destiny 2, and Civilization 6 has been Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you're picking some really small-sized, short little games.
Oh yeah, so,
Some small indies as well.
yeah, I get some sessions done in like an afternoon or 70. But
Yeah.
yeah, the Cyberpunk is very strong on the we want the soundtrack to fit the ambience thing. So for this playlist, there's the song "The Heist," which kind of plays early on in the game, and it's exactly what it sounds like. The song is you got caught and you're in combat.
Yeah, things are not going well for this heist.
Oh yeah, literally everyone dies, including you, and that's the prologue. Or the game says it's Act 1, but Act 1 is literally prologue part 2 in practice. And yes, you die. So yeah, that's all I have for Cyberpunk for now. That's my whole take, because I haven't been playing that much because of the next game, which I've already mentioned, Civilization 6. So yeah, I don't know whether Galen will keep the bloopers for this episode or not, but I've been having some internet issues, and Civilization 6 turns out to be the one game I have installed in my PC that can run offline right now. So I've been playing that a bunch. And I brought to the playlist this time the medieval era theme for Egypt. People who know me know I love Egypt. And
yeah, and that theme in particular feels like an interesting crossover in influences.
Yes.
Like, you really feel like you're at the heart of our merchant empire. Which is the kind of gameplay Egypt favors.
At least until Ramses comes as a new leader.
Yes.
But yeah. And I noted in a previous episode how Brazil had a very... had some songs that were inspired by actual popular Brazilian music. And I've learned that the themes that Egypt has in the medieval era and the atomic era, they are inspired by a song that's apparently very popular around Egypt, modern day Egypt, and Arabian countries, Arabic speaking countries, which is titled El Helwadi. And it, after listening to them side by side, I can definitely hear that. So I imagine pretty much every nation in this game has their themes inspired by popular songs from their corresponding nations in real life. I managed to catch in game how the Scotland civilization has themes inspired by Scotland the Brave, for example. So seems like a running theme for this game. But still, I like learning about other cultures, so thumbs up from me.
I like the oud in this song. It's got cool stuff going on there. It's obviously very on the nose. It's very Middle Eastern. This definitely sounds a lot more like Middle Ages medieval than the last medieval track you gave us, which I didn't think sounded on point very much at all. So this one's definitely a lot closer to what I would expect from that era, like musically.
It's the benefit of this being a civilization that actually existed in the medieval ages.
Fair.
But yeah,
Very fair.
That's been my list for the past few weeks. So Galen's next.
Okay, so I got 3 on here. The first is New Arknights event, Carnival in the Ideal City, which is an event with no antagonist. So the music actually is like very happy and bouncy.
Yeah, it's very light-hearted anime.
It is. It's got some interesting things going on in there, though. Like, there's a bit of a country guitar going on underneath the synths, which I think is pretty cool. Also, I had a case where the welfare unit and the final boss are actually the same person. So I had, like, my very first clear of the event boss was my guy shooting himself in the face to beat the boss.
Excellent.
Which I thought was hilarious. I did not plan that at all, and you could see me on stream breaking down laughing for a good several moments after that. I was not expecting that at all. Next game, I'm technically repeating myself on now playing, but Celeste again. I beat the Summit. And that song is kind of like one of the 2 like main classic songs from the Celeste soundtrack by Lena Raine. I think everyone knows it.
Yeah. It's just a really nice succession of echoes of the previous songs, which match the accelerated pace of progression of that section.
It is.
Perfect match. No notes.
Yep. And then finally, I've been playing a kind of a cheap Unity Vampire Survivors clone called Army of Ruin. This one takes its inspiration primarily from World of Warcraft. Its visual inspiration, because I guess that's part of the thing with this genre now, is you've got to take your visual inspiration from something nostalgic. Okay. I guess that's
Sounds
just
about
part
right.
of the... Yeah. One thing it didn't take from World of Warcraft, however, is it has really, really good music, none of which I could provide because it's just not on YouTube.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. But the soundtrack is actually, like, really good. There's 3 stages and variations of those stages. And the music for all 3 of those stages is actually super solid. I'm already looking forward to Army of Ruin, the Searing Holy War, and Revenge of the Necromancer Emperor.
Those are names.
Do I have to explain the joke? The Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King.
It's a Star Wars thing, yes.
Yeah. No, it's not a Star Wars thing. It's
Okay.
it's a World of Warcraft thing. It's the first 2 expansions. It's the Burning
Oh,
Crusade and
yes.
Wrath of the Lich King.
I
Yeah.
got that.
Brain.
I've
I
wasted
focus too much on them.
I've wasted too much time on
And
World of
Silver's Power.
Warcraft
Yes.
and on World of Warcraft lore subreddit to not think of those instantly. I was one of those guys until 2018.
I was kind of one of those guys until Warlords of Draenor. That expansion was awful.
That's the one that had me quit as well.
Honestly, I quit on that one as well, and then I got back on the following one, which is why I dropped off a bit later than you guys. But we all dropped off from World of Warcraft.
And if you want to hit that...
Hey, at least we all enjoyed the Thunder Palace, which was a pretty good raid.
Wait, which one was Thunder Palace?
The Mr. Thundaria first patch one.
Oh, that's after I came back. I came back, like, middle of Orgrimmar.
Yeah.
Which was actually a really good raid. But anyway, if you want to hit that nostalgia button without feeling guilty about supporting Blizzard, Army of Ruin has that vibe. First stage is clearly the Western Plaguelands. The second stage is clearly around Orgrimmar. And the third stage is absolutely you're raiding Ironforge.
And honestly, I am shocked and appalled at the idea that a game inspired by Vampire Survivors could take very clear inspiration from other games of the past and copy a lot of its elements. Oh wait.
Yeah.
Let me go run Vampire Survivors as the guy wielding a whip fighting monsters from classical horror movies in a clock tower.
Exactly.
Very
Although technically it's more of a science tower.
100% original concept, do not steal.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, to steal those original concept, you'd first need to sneak around, so let's prepare our next operation. Until next time, you can message us at music.arcade.podcast@gmail.com. Thank you very much for listening, and I am going to exfiltrate with Galen's part of the outro now.
See you guys. Take care.
Give back my cardboard box.
It's mine!